Awesome.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Karen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh my gosh, Karen grew up literally down the hill from me.
Yeah.
That's awesome. See, that's what we've been finding on Thursdays is that we get to see people that we haven't seen in a while that like we
Oh,
have
yeah.
ties to from childhood. It's really been amazing. And I
Yeah.
you think about in-person readings and how we don't always get to do that. So I'm very grateful. Aw. Yeah. So Heidi just wrote, Ellen, your bio and books look fascinating. I can't wait to get a book. And so I do want to let everybody know I have started the recording. So if you would prefer not to show up on camera, you're welcome to turn off your video. My name is Malika Albrecht, and we are so excited to welcome Ellen Stone here tonight. We will be celebrating her book, What is in the Blood? The bio is in the chat section. I'm not going to read too much, but I do really want to give a shout out to her for being a special education teacher for 20 plus years.
30 plus years.
30 plus years. Yes. No, you have my deepest respect for that. That is amazing. Still very active in the community, helping youth. I gotta let somebody in on the chat section. Youth with writing, and that is our beautiful thing to pass along to future generations. I do want to also really point out that after this reading, you'll have a chance to ask questions. So you're welcome to use the chat section so you don't forget a question. You're also welcome to put in the chat section any lines that resonate with you. I'm always surprised with how like some of us will write the same line at the same time and it'll post up on the chat section 3 times. That's just the way that works. If you want a book, you can get a signed book, which is fabulous. Just contacting Ellen. Her email address is in the chat section. So just look egstone1135@gmail.com. And you can also go to her website, ellenstone.org. So reach out and support. It's hard enough to have a book of poetry, given the best of times. And right now during the pandemic has been a really struggling time. So we're lucky because this is a poet that I wouldn't have gotten to hear speak in person. And so I'm going to turn it over and stop talking and mute myself and make you the spotlight. Ellen, welcome so much. We're really glad to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. I really want to thank Malika, especially because there really aren't that many people who are willing to host people reading from their books during the pandemic. I had one reading in Ann Arbor, and then everything shut down. And my book is almost at its 1-year anniversary. So the poems in What is in the Blood, and this is a painting from an Ann Arbor artist, they focus broadly on my mom's struggle with bipolar disorder or manic depression, as it was called then. Its impact on our family growing up, as well as my caring for her later in life. So I was 10 when she was diagnosed. My parents were teachers who wanted to raise their children in the country. We grew and preserved our own food. They really wanted to teach us the value of hard work. Let's see, my mom was a Boston girl. She was very vibrant and full of life. She had been a tap dancer and a cheerleader. She was a really good student. She liked to write. My father was an English teacher, also a really good writer and gardener. And he really taught us to love the earth, to love language. I realized that he introduced me to poetry. I read E.E. Cummings from his library. He also taught us, along with my grandmother, to love people no matter where they are from or what they look like. So tonight, I decided to pick a theme for my poems because it's really hard to decide what poems to read. So I chose tonight poems that have light in them as we watch the light come back day by day here in mid-February. And I also chose poems that feature creatures of prey, especially birds. But for some reason, during these last 4 years, the idea of hawks and coyotes and fox and owls have been important to me, maybe especially during the election. And then there's a few poems that have ghosts in them too, because I think I always call on my ancestors for guidance. And I'm going to do one thing here. I'm going to shut the door to my laundry room because the furnace is on. Hang on. Okay, I'm worried that that's going to be a little bit too much background noise. Okay. This is my mother's mind. She doesn't remember how she lost it. We were young and needed her, remembering the regular things, plates coming on and off the table, venison in the frying pan, glasses of milk poured from the dented pail, greasy stove, cluttered counter, whole days, weeks dissolved. Her mind, a dark cave, plummeted below the tufted quilt, dusty gray floorboards, deep into dirt cellar, the coal bin, glossy lumps chinking and clanking, old red furnace singing a burning song. Sometimes we wandered there, lit shards of kindling like small torches, held them, watching wood turn into space, tiny flickered chambers, opening small rooms in the dark. Dear sons and daughters of hungry ghosts, my best advice is learn to cook. That way you can feed whoever wanders into the kitchen. I started with ground venison when mom got sick, oil in cast iron, onion chopped, clipped recipes from the paper. A useful child is one who works, or so my father taught me. I suppose it is the same with ghosts, not knowing what their world is like. Transmigration of souls. Light off the swamp, even in December, tracks in the coyote snow, shale cliff edge or rooted burrow. Granny's ghost at my shoulder, tisking at the whiskey in her cupboard. She has been crossing the same threshold at Christmas for 20 years. Once a cherry table filled with goose, duck, pies. Mother ferried the food in. Grandpa's visage at the head, Granny clucking approval, quiet dog underfoot. Funny what death can bring, us turning into the lost mother, caring for ourselves, but who will be the grandparents? Father left silent. More howling now, less hymns, coyotes chanting, dogs chained. Some things even Granny can't foretell. My book has kind of different sections, and it shifts from childhood to really me in my 20s. And I became aware of the impact of my mom's illness. I don't think we even really thought very much about it when we were growing up, because we just pitched in and did what had to be done. But I went into therapy after being sexually assaulted in my early 20s. And so the next two poems reference this event. And I was living in Kansas at the time. The day after that, sun streams across the corn, some kind of silent sea, fierce, possessed of a quiet venom. Like when you told the boy raping you what he should do, how you would help him run. This is when you understand old divisions that seem biblical: good, bad, just, undo, free, taken. The honeybee and golden jackal roaming the wood, setting up camp, scavenging for juice and bones. In the morning after, the air foggy and fair-eyed, it's hard to envision losing anything. When the officer interviewed you, wrote cold words on the ledger that were wrong, you said nothing, as if there was anything you could have known, seen, halted, your eyes full of Kansas sky. You're back home again. Songbirds in the yard. Do they know you? What are they saying now? Here's the clean light streaming for nothing. Here the window ajar. A breeze touches your body, lilting. This next poem is for my 3 daughters. Your grandpa was a fox hunter. I'll fashion my daughters a cave made of fox skins. My dad hung to cure from the old cellar rafters. The mink and the muskrat will cloak them in night reeds. They'll bathe with cool moonlight in pools, still and quiet. Now one's fully shrouded, they'll slip through the cornfields and eat with the ravens, run sleek like coyote and stalk the night bobcat. My girls, can I give you my past as protection? A shotgun, an old truck, the men at the diner who knew your great granddad, who preached all those sermons, how Jesus would keep us as safe in his bosom as Granny kept Sunday, the Lord's Day, as holy. The people who raised me take fear as prediction, as God's word, his only. For girls to be furtive, claws showing, teeth shining, might be their salvation, their way of surviving. I'll take my chances and teach them that hunting is deep in their bloodline, the body as beast if need be, when wolf men come a-calling. Flask. Flash of guilt or sorrow, though the glass is smooth, fits in the hand like a flat rock from the lakeshore. Now, past middle age, what it means to come home, wanting to wash the day off, like a stream over wet moss, that shock. Reminder that once you were young, wished you were older and pretended, kept beer in the culvert at the end of the dirt road, commiserated together late nights having sneaked out of the house after parents shut off the light. Love you wished was yours, sadness you threw off like an old familiar jacket. Now the house empty, your own children gone. You understand why in the fragile twilight you could take a flask to the garden, sipping a deepness that feels like heat and spring and wishing somehow to go back. What were your parents like? Would you love them? Have a drink together, sitting on the porch in the rain? My mother is also a kidney transplant patient due to her years of taking lithium, because in the early years, I guess they just didn't regulate the amounts enough, and her kidneys failed. But when she moved to Ann Arbor, she came up on the list, and her kidney is a cadaver kidney from a child. This is Good Friday in the transplant clinic. We sit compliant. A stream of names float in the air. Matthew, Florence, David. Mother goes to blood draw across the busy hallway. Now the wheelchair bound line up. The most fragile of the mobile, wearing masks, shuffle their walkers. Almost sprightly at 74, mom glows her new life with a child's kidney. An hour's wait is nothing. Does a child's spirit exist separate from the body? Did she rise up like Jesus on that day we got the call saying there was a kidney, her soul hovering above the cooler, curious? The lines are long. My arms feel hollow. I want to call out to her, little girl who saved my mother. Find a flight to Oklahoma to guide the living through their long walk. My mother's blood courses, looping gently through her circular riverbed of veins. I sit nearby, waiting, watching for any sign of redemption. March burning through. On the drive down Stadium, smoke wings and the sky opens, butter against gray blue, end of winter, indigo questions hanging in the mild. All these lights around me popping, flashes like cameras used to, exploding. Any day, bulbs. The greening will come back, like those old days, me following. Road, a path, tunnel leading through. My father's voice clear, telling me he is finding where his life started. First dog, the deer he felled, that hunt, those hills, they will never end. No ridges or hollows for me to find myself out here in the flatlands. Watch snow recede like only so much time left. My mother is still here, but I see her shrinking. Pull her back. Stay, Mom. Isn't life good? We'll grocery shop. Cheer to find the right aisle. She tells me, have to get out of here, move somewhere, Ypsilanti. I am losing her again. Leave her a bouquet. Sweet Jesus, the Baptist, I used to follow you too. Believed somehow everything connected back, or so Granny told me, her Bible on the kitchen table. But Mom going crazy again, and that is how we grew up. I know how it works. The old, we tell them everything will be all right. Tell the young that too. Smile small. Brown birds filter through bare branches, soon tipped with cloud and swollen. All the budding can't be stopped, or so it seems, but how to say it is enough to keep open the sky holes and see them over again. Container of souls. Hospital, said slowly, is a soft hiss spitting, air whispered, thin and forced from a filled container. We are falling into the darkened parking lot, waiting room, from a long distance, it seems, although it is just across town, over the empty train tracks and quiet river bridge. Time drips differently here, thick and solitary. We all need somewhere to go, and some of us come here. Teenage girl with deep scratches on her neck, who reminds me of someone. Slight man with braids, draped in white cotton, leg tapping, a metronome. He could be the boy I taught in kindergarten who did not want to grow up. My mother scrunches her face up, sour as June apples, saying something is not right, a blue cloud seeping into her brain. Bows her head as in prayer, lacing her veiny hands. The river of my mother's life flows past us, slumped in these waiting room chairs. An east wind is coming up, she says. Cold, it will be cold when we get back outside. How fluorescent our faces, unreal in this vinyl ether world. Here we say, we have come here looking for a path. Give us back what we have lost in the sanitary chapel of the emergency room. Frost settles over the soccer field across the highway. I am aware that all the young leave, but then they must find their way. Here, my mother tells her story, and when I repeat it, she says she does not know if what I say comes from the heart. She needs the doctor from the 9th floor to sit with her, confirm her sadness like a priest confirms sin. Stillness settling over the white building as the patients move toward cars or beds. River calling across the night asphalt, rooks and owls folding into trees. I want to end by reading 2 new poems, if I could. I think I've been struggling a lot in these last 4 years, and especially around the election, at the enormous divisions in our country, because I come from rural America, and I don't remember there being divisions in those days, even though my family's Democrats and other people are Republicans. But anyway, this is called Hunting Season. On a day of bone picked clean, scavengers circling, worry rattling its deep hollow, this path to wander down, scattering as if you don't belong in open air. Leaf quilt, how woods build a room of gold, then paint it tawny or slick gray in late fall. Clearings, songbird still or whistling through your chafing heart, softly waving phragmites. Off the small ridge, roots entwine like steps, and you pick your way down, alone except the dog who halts now and then, pricks her velvet ears that stand up like little tents. Below, the breeze is damp off the farm pond, and there 3 fat swans float and dip. Their bottoms rise like silent boat hulls, plump and solid, while the heron skulks in a corner where she often waits, a sheath in shadow. Salute her as you do the white-bellied hawk dangling a squirming small thing from her beak, the huntress who'll protect and keep you. And finally, after January 6th, I really had to grapple with the idea that people I grew up with and people I loved see the world a very different way than I do. So I don't know, sometimes I just write poems about what I'm trying to grapple with. So this is called Men I Grew Up With. Men I grew up with. I know they wake early to feed the dogs, put the coffee on, get ready for the chores, whether there are cows still in the barn, or even if the structure that holds equipment is empty now, the hill wind winding through it a bit, depending on the direction it comes. When they open the door to the day, dark greets them like a friend. I know the banked warmth of their bodies as they walk out to the truck, knowing that winter has come and the heat is on. Wood is stacked against the house. They test the wind's direction, tip of a finger held up, wetted. But somewhere there is fear too. It grips them inside. Their hearts might tense there in the early blue. I know they think their guns will help. Their wives, kids too. The dogs outside who bay to be fed, bay when it's time to head out to track coyote or bear. But the restlessness does not abate, not with whiskey or beer or sleep. Somewhere back in time, they heard those hymns the grandparents sang, holding firm to the wooden pew. They were too little to understand the verses. I know the words come back now. They drive the winding roads past gas rigs, past water trucks plowing steady down the narrow blacktop roads. They want to know Jericho, the promised land. They want to cross the Jordan River too before they die. They want God to not forget them while they are already forgettable. And they know this. Know it is already too late. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Ellen. If people want to unmute and clap, I think it's so important.
That was great.
Bravo.
Yay, Ellen.
Yay.
Yay, Ellen.
You guys, oh my gosh, look at all of you.
Good.
Hi.
Here.
Gosh, this represents a huge swath of my life, from literally the hill I grew up on. There are 2 people from the hill I grew up on.
Oh,
That's awesome. Isn't that amazing?
It's incredible to me. There are people that I taught with for years and years. Dear, dear.
Well, thank you just so very much. And I have to say, I loved hearing the 2 new poems too, but this was a very active chat section. So I'm just going to go through a couple of things that I don't want you to miss. And I will send this entire thing to you, Ellen, so you can see.
Can you send me the chat?
Yes, I will. I'll do that so that you can read it at your leisure. That's the best way to see what was resonating. And there was a couple of times where 2 or 3 of us said the same thing about different quotes that, you know, just stuck with us. But I do want you to know that, you know, people were just saying so lush and gorgeous language. When you were talking about
my little sister
was
also a teacher.
Who's also a teacher. Wow.
I think my cousin.
That's pretty. You've got families of teachers.
Oh yeah, there's teaching is like goes way back. My grandmother was a teacher.
Yeah, useful child. Christy, I saw you put that down too. So did I. That really stuck with me. And I love the granny poems. I did. And then Heidi just mentioned, yes, a lot of people that you know, but also strangers too that are just meeting you for the first time. Quiet Venom, here is the clean light streaming for nothing. I really like that you did a theme and it gave me a kind of a touch point within the poems to come to. That was a nice idea. To keep open the sky holes. A lot of people like that. Time drips different here. 3 people wrote that down. You'll find it very interesting to see what stuck with people. Teresa said, Ellen, that was lovely.
Like I have never read that poem, the sexual assault poem, out loud before. So it's just to be brave. Like I'm old enough that I can do this.
You know, this is a very important thing though, and we hosted the Grabbed anthology, which was, you know, survivors and allies, and I just wanted to come back to that, Ellen. It's such a brave poem to do, and I'm so honored that you chose to do it tonight with us, because I think that that's such an important part of using art, poetry for healing, but also elevating. Even when you were talking about such a difficult thing, your language was gorgeous. It was just powerful to have the emotions, but to have such the perfect vehicle for it. And I really deeply wanted to, I admire it, and I wanted to point out just how well that works. You just have a mastery of language that I really enjoyed.
It's really hard to write about. For some reason, writing about my mom has been so much easier for me. I think because I was a child, and you know, there were years, and there was a lot of distance, and I don't know. And I had help. I had my siblings and my dad. To write about the sexual assault, it's really just, it's a very lonely thing. It's really just you and the perpetrator. So that's been really hard. I think I've only written 3 poems about that in my life, but
wow. Yeah, you know, and I know that after the Grabbed anthology, I talked to several people in attendance, and they wrote about their experiences for the first time. And as somebody who is a former rape crisis counselor, you know, we know this is 1 out of 3 women before the age of 18. So, you know, you're in good company, but you also are, like you said, writing, you're in that experience by yourself. When you are growing up in a family, you have your siblings to bounce things off of, but sexual assault is such a personal experience. And it's such a difficult thing to write about.
I think one of the reasons I really wanted to write this book, but I was also very scared to write this book, was because when I was growing up, we did not talk about my mom's illness to anybody. And so my neighbors and even my cousins did not know what was going on in our family. And the idea that you're alone with that is so, I mean, it didn't occur to us then because we were just living our lives. But in retrospect, we were so isolated and alone with it, and assuming this is just what you have to deal with in life. And I just want to let people know that you're not alone. Like there are other people who have to deal with what you dealt with. And I think now there's so much more of an understanding that you can get help and you can reach out and you can, you know, there are groups of people that are there to help you. But the same with sexual assault. My own daughters did not know I was sexually assaulted because you just sort of put it back in the back of your you know, in the old, that happened a long time ago and it's over with. But when I had daughters, I realized my daughters need to know this. They need to know that I lived through this and what it was like, and that it's part of life.
But I felt like your poem to your daughters was really about like preparing them and saying, you know, here's what's here. No, I'm trying to find the one line that you said, Wolfman. Am I pulling that out of context? But
Yeah.
that was powerful.
Yeah.
Say that again.
When the men keep a calling.
Yes, there we go. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. And somebody just wrote, so good, so good. Yes, so good. The line in the poem about how you would help him run is devastating, is what Scott said. That's a perfect way to put it, Scott. And Carla said, I enjoyed your book from your hometown and neighbor, Carla Ferris. Tewksbury, still a neighbor of your dad and your grandparents. So you've got people.
She lives in the woods right next to where my parents live in the woods in my grandparents' old house.
That's awesome.
Oh,
But I did want to honor, I wanted to go back to what you just said and writing the brave poems. And I think that even though there's a lot more awareness out there, and certainly the Me Too movement, and then also, you know, the mental health stigma, but it still is very much that, you know, and you think about how your experience in your childhood is your own experience, and you don't know what other ranges of expression there are until you start going over to other people's houses and you think, well, that's not how our house goes. And I think it's so beautiful for people to be able to pick up a book and hear someone talk at a very honest level about that experience. And I think that that's the thing that
it's also really, really scary. Though.
builds.
Like, I just have to say, to write poems that are about your life and about what happened to you and also happened to other people. For one thing, I was really scared about my mom reading this book and my dad. And in fact, my mom has read this book and she said, it's really, really sad. And I said, I know, Mom, it is sad, but it's true. And also, look what happened on the other end of it. I mean, she's 89. I was just at her house today, giving her a shower and making dinner. And she's hung in there. Like, she is such a trooper, and she's so, like, things happen to her and she just kind of rolls with it. So in a way, I want to be like my mom, because it doesn't, it's not that it doesn't affect her, but she's gone through so much and she's still out there. Like, she's still cooking. She's still wanting to.
And that's what I wanted. Yeah. And I wanted to talk about that. So how did you navigate that? You know, because when you're writing close to, did you send it out to your siblings? How did you approach that?
I do send a lot of my poems to my siblings and my family, although I will say that I don't always send painful poems to my dad. So I tend to send him the less painful ones. But I had a chapbook that I got published before this book, and I was really scared to have my dad in particular read it, because he divorced my mom, and I think that there was a sense of failure on his part, that he couldn't overcome, you know, her illness, their marriage. I think that was one of the scariest things in my life, and I literally sat next to him while he read the book, and he was quiet. He read the whole book. I just sat there, and he said at the end, "It's good. It's true." It was devastating. So the same thing with this book. Like this, I had the same feelings. Like, you know, and it's hard. This book is in my hometown library. You know, and there's a part of me that feels like I don't want, like, who's going to pick up this book and just read it? But on the other hand, you know.
But I think you're also acknowledging the vulnerability. I mean, and I think that's very real too, you know, and I think that a lot of poets back off of things that feel a little bit too exposed. So I think that you're realistically navigating, how do you approach that? How, you know, and that embracing the courage.
Yeah. I think for me, it was, okay, is it true? And am I writing it because it's going to help me or someone else? or am I like, if you're not, if it's just sensational, then I'm not going to write it. But if I'm writing it because it's going to help, or if it's true, those are my two things, then I can write it. Well, you can write anything, but I mean, I can publish it if it's true and if it's going to be helpful.
I like that that's your guideline. So that kind of helps in understanding your process and how you approach things. That's awesome. And I don't want to hog. I know other people want to ask questions. So, you know, feel free to jump in because I will keep talking. I want to make sure I didn't miss a question in here. Okay, here we go. One new message. Ted Kuzer says we write to make sense of life. And Heidi, that is kind of what I think, Ellen, you were saying that with the last two poems, with the last 4 years, in particular January 6th, that you were trying to understand. So it sounds like poetry is also a way of you asking and answering or exploring. What is your writing process like?
I wish I could say that I'm one of those. I do get up really early. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, but it's not like I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and sit down and write poems for 2 hours. I do a little bit of this. I do a little bit of that. I read a little. I write a little. I edit a little. If I have a deadline, I write a poem. Or I don't. Not like I strap myself to a desk and make myself write. So it does tend to come from something inside me. Unless, here's what really is very helpful though, when people say, hey, poet friends, let's do a challenge. Let's write a poem a day for an entire month. And I'll say, sure, sign me up, because then I'll really do it. Because left to my own devices, I will not. So if I really want to write a lot, I have to have company. But if it's just me, I might write a poem a week now that I'm retired. I have no idea how I wrote anything when I taught. Like my friend Scott teaches. I have no idea how you write anything.
But Scott just had a question for you. And actually you have a bunch of people saying, Teresa said she's ready to sign up for the 30 poems in 30 days. So you've got a challenge then. And Scott said, I don't. But Scott had a really good question, clarifying when you say, you know, is it true and will it help? Scott wanted to kind of ask, when you ask that, who you help who is the what he's asking, help who?
Well, I guess primarily me, but maybe the world. Like, is it going to be helpful to have this poem out there? I guess we're talking about publishing now. Is it going to be helpful to someone, to me and or someone else?
Yeah.
They're my poems. They're going to, I mean, I'm writing them to help me. But is it going to, like that whole, when I wrote the one about men I grew up with, and I have to say this to Carla and Karen, because, you know, we grew up with the same men. I'm like, is that poem going to help anybody? Like, I hope it's not, I didn't want to put that poem out there to be like, I'm looking down at the people I grew up with. I'm trying to understand the people I grew up with. And I'm trying to understand.
Captures them beautifully.
What was that?
It captures them beautifully. And I think the conflict that they live with internally, and the heritage of around living in a rural place,
yeah,
where they're so connected to the land and intergenerations.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I thought the poem was beautiful.
And Ellen, I don't know if you can hear your own music. I think it's hard for a poet to hear her own music sometimes. And I think I have a lot of respect for that idea of examining your motives, right? Examining why you want to bring a poem into the world. But I think there's something really essential about making music of experience, no matter how painful it is. And your language is so, I keep using the same word over and over again, which tells you about my vocabulary, what's happened to it. But there's a beautiful music in it. And that alone, making music of human experience, that is, I don't know if I can call that useful, but I certainly think it's essential.
Mhm. I think music was very critical in my growing up because my grandparents were ministers, and hymns literally, like when my uncles got together, they would like sing a hymn, like it would just sort of come out of them. So like there were hymns flowing around the house. And then my dad was an English teacher, and he was also doing drama. So he was like quoting Lewis Carroll and Shakespeare, and that kind of stuff was flying around. And then at some point he got into jazz music. I mean, here we are living in cow country, and he got some sort of monthly record thing. And so then the music started coming. We were listening to jazz and Pete Seeger, and it's crazy. So all of this stuff kind of was just there. It was like the soundtrack of my life. Then of course I have 3 siblings, and it was the 60s and the 70s. It was great music all the time. So anyway, so I think we did have some very musical.
Herb Albert and the Tijuana Brass.
There was a huge soundtrack to our life.
That's awesome. Somebody just wrote something I really wanted to come back to. Besides Heidi saying pre-COVID vocabulary 900 million, post-COVID vocabulary 300. I think a lot of us relate to that. Georgiana said, it will be helpful for sure. Sexual assault, mental illness, and those close to us who have political beliefs that are polar opposite of ours. Writing, dear, brave, strong woman. Boy, you are definitely going to take, you keep this somewhere to read at different times. Yes.
I'm going to need
that's lovely.
You guys, can I just tell you, I got a poem published today. I found out a poem got published today. I have not had news of a poem being published since July. Okay. And granted, my mom broke her hip in July, but like, that's like a long time. And so after a while, you sort of doubt yourself and think, oh, maybe I'll never get another poem published in my life. Maybe I just peaked and that was it. So it's very helpful to just have this feedback to feel, oh, I really can reach people. My poems do kind of matter out there in the world, because
I think that's important.
Yeah.
And I think it's harder to feel that synergy that we kind of need from other artistic people during these times, because most of us are, our interactions have gotten less and less in person, and there's a amount of synergy that has to happen. Yeah, Heidi just said we were our worst and most critical critic. And then somebody said submit to Dunes. Teresa said.
Oh my gosh, you guys, Dunes Review. Yay, Dunes Review is literally, I bow down to them because they are responsible for me publishing as an adult. I mean, I published early, like in my early 20s. And then I got married and I had kids. I didn't publish for years. And I found this thin little beautiful journal in Northern Michigan. And I said, oh my God, this is the kind of place I'd like to be published in. And then lo and behold, that's where I got published. And then they keep publishing me. Teresa.
Oh, that's fabulous. And Teresa, you are an editor with Dune?
It's such an accessible.
Do you want to talk about real quick, submissions are open now or all the time?
Sure. No, we do it we do 2 issues a year, and we have really been slowed down by COVID because it's a volunteer journal. People have reacted in different ways. So we are now finalizing our short list for something that we hope to have out in October. So we've been affected, but we're determined to do 2 a year. So submissions, boy, I would guess they'll be open again in April-ish, something like that. Yes, and I invite all of you to submit. We love to see work.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's perfect. So people keep your eyes out for Dune. And then Ellen, I wanted to talk, go back to what you said, getting a poem. It's nice that you have a poem published. It does remind us that our work has value. But I wanted to let people know, if you have any questions, jump in. And if not, we will head towards open mic. I have 2 people signed up. So if you would like to read, please do so, because it would be lovely to hear anybody who wants to read.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment, Ellen, which is that your poems about your mother and about sexual assault give other people permission to talk about what has transpired in their lives. And in doing that, it is a great service that you're doing to other people by being honest. And I think about being at school and the whole depression awareness and trying to get rid of the stigma around mental illness, but it's also around sexual assault too. If we don't talk about it, it stays in the dark and it's so insidious. So your poems are very necessary, and I'm very glad that they're in our public library. They will help people.
Aw.
Thank you, Sheree. Thank you. Appreciate
I
that.
love that you said that, that you're glad they're in the public library, that they will help people. That is really, you think about how that makes it accessible, and it gives people permission to talk, and it lets them know they're not alone. There's so many things that a poem can do. We spend a lot of time doing poetry therapy in our rape crisis program because it was so powerful. We hear poets work. And at the time, there was very few poets talking about sexual assault. We had to really work. Marge Piercy, the rape poem, one of the first ones I ever found, and I'm glad that you've added to this, Ellen. It's important.
Thank you.
Okay, Christy, you're going to read too? All right. So I'm slowly making a list. When you were putting the book together, Ellen, I did want to talk a little bit about your process and your editing process. And we talked about your musicality because it's just such lush language and there is such a beautiful musicality to your work. Is that something you consciously do when you edit, or is that something that because the music was kind of steeping in your childhood that you think you just have a natural sense for?
I think that what I forgot to mention about how I write is I often come up with lines and ideas when I walk. And my sister will recognize that when I was young, I would just sometimes leave the house with my journal and I would walk through the fields. And there was a barn that I would stop in and I'd sit in the barn and write. So I like the rhythm of rural life is actually very musical. So like there's a lot happening outside, and that's where a lot of I think that's where a lot of the lines come from, is just being outside and moving and watching and really observing what's going on. So it's, I mean, they just often come out that way. It's not that, editing is usually more around like trying to contain them a little bit and kind of get rid of too much excess.
That's awesome. Yeah, so you find that you spend more time cutting down or tweaking the poem that way rather than the musicality. I think the music, it almost, there's a meditative quality, and I thought about like the meditation of being present and of walking and of paying attention, and that is something that I do that makes sense.
I also think for me, this isn't always true for other poets, but for me, my poems tend to have a narrative quality to them, because I think of them as a story. I think of them as a little, what I love about poems, I don't think I could ever write a novel. I would die because I don't have that attention span. Same with a short, like I've written a couple short stories in my life, but I like the fact that they're so condensed. Like you can put a ton of stuff into a very small space, and you can sit down and in an hour or even a half hour, you can have something. It's like baking muffins. You get a product. Like, I love that. So that's just me. Like there are plenty of amazing writers who plug away and they plug away and they plug away and they can produce epic work that connects and it's long. And I don't know, I don't think that's me. I'm just much more, I'm a spurt kind of writer.
Well, there is something lovely about one-page items. And I know Lucille Clifton, somebody was asking her about her lengths of poems. She said, I have kids. I don't have time to write that much.
Asking me, where do you write? I'm like, well, let's see. I write at the kitchen table a ton. The couch, if I ever sit down. Now I sit down a lot. I never used to sit down, but the kitchen table, the couch, or in the classroom. Like I would co-teach intro to lit so I could get to write. I would co-teach creative writing, and I had a poetry club. So I would write with the kids. So I would say a good handful or more of the poems in this book came from the kids writing with my students.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ellen. It has just been delightful to hear a little bit more of the backstories and just wonderful to have you here.
Oh my gosh, you're amazing for doing this, and what a
Oh,
great
so much
audience.
fun.
Yay!
This has been my touchstone. Thursdays have been very our touchstones. So I do have a few people that signed up for open mic. I'm going to name the names. It's Karen, Heidi, and Christy. And if I missed anybody, please let me know. Yeah, no, somebody just wrote, writing poetry is like baking muffins. Take that to the bank. Yeah, it really is like it. But I can, yeah, that's awesome. And Julie said, thank you, Ellen. So great to hear your poetry. I will send this to you later on. So we are heading to open mic. Karen, I'm going to start with you if that's good by you.
That is good by me. Yes. Okay. So yeah, I wasn't going to read this tonight because I felt like people would think it's political, and it's not political. This is really about my heartbreaking, but this is, I don't know. I guess there's a reason I pulled it tonight. So this one is for you, Ellen. Inciting Fables. And I wrote this on January 6th. There is no Secretary of the Interior monologues, no dictation, no shorthand, no fact check, no hat check. There is only the lonely oligarch who has never been anyone's prince or king, whose fragmented thoughts are erupting, disrupting, whose furrowed brow has been plowed, whose lips are spittle littered as he pounds and he pounds, thumbs up and thumbs down on the keys. He's been pounding keys. There is never a final draft, only the rough. The chap is cracked. This is raw. All thumbs down on the keys to the kingdom. Pound, impound, hit, send, sent. Incendiary words from cataracted eyes, incendiary devices from the cloudy-eyed, angry, tantruming boys, needing, even tiny pats on their heads, needing the seeing of pounded words, needing the hearing of "we love you" and "you're very special," needing to have great again. The boys cannot have great again. None of the boys has ever had great. There is no happily ever after here. This has been the oligarchs' fee, fi, fo, fum fable. There are no morals here. And this was in response to the news reports during the riots that Donald Trump was saying in his statements to the rioters, "We love you and you're very special."
Mm-hmm. Holy cow, girl. Wow. People can unmute that. Karen, that was fabulous. You actually I'm speechless for a moment. That is so unlike anything you've ever written.
I know. Well, it was.
You just caught me so off guard.
Oh, sorry.
No, I am thrilled. I love that.
So good.
I love being caught off guard. And, a lot of people put furrowed brow has been plowed. Certainly, boy, you had spittle littered. That stuck with a lot of people.
Sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it really was not a political poem for me. My heart was breaking when the whole day. But then just to hear those words being issued to the writer, the whole day broke my heart. Yeah.
Well, I think also if you've been watching the impeachment hearings, like I spent the day doing that. And so it's hard not to, and also to recognize that there's a lot of survivors that are in Congress and the Senate that are getting re-triggered and re-traumatized. And we know Capitol Police, at least 2 have committed suicide since then. And so, it's a very triggering thing. So thank you for writing about the language was wonderful.
Thank
you. That
you.
really helped move it.
Thank you for having a safe place to read that. And Ellen, thank you so much for sharing your work tonight. Was so moving.
This has been such a beautiful.
Now, you said you weren't going to read this.
No, I wasn't.
You said you weren't going to read this, Karen? Was it?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't.
I have a feeling it was, did Ellen?
Yeah, well, I had pulled it and I had another one about my cat was what I was leaning toward, a cat poem.
I'm so glad you did this one.
Yeah. It's a nice cat poem, though. I can read that another time.
Also, I
But
don't,
so I almost wonder if you were inspired because of Ellen's risk, being
I
vulnerable.
was. I mean,
That was-
that's what did it. Yeah.
the other thing I have to tell you is that I think it's also really, we do have to write political poems because they're hard to write, but we have to write poems when things happen that that stir us up. And
Yeah.
I think I have a whole pile of those too. And I think they're almost harder to write because they're broad and you have to make them yours and you have to make them matter to your heart. But boy,
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I just feeling people's pain and anger, and it's the people you love, and everybody's coming from a different place.
Right.
It's hard.
that was beautiful. You should send that out.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I was going to give you some suggestions too for where to send it.
Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of people, so Karen, beautiful poem, Karen, this is in the chat section, very powerful and necessary, but it was perfect. Y'all are so great.
Really
I'm going next to Christy, and give me
Okay.
one moment. Love you.
I never read that out loud to an audience.
Oh, I'm so proud of you. That was
Sorry, guys.
beautiful. Don't apologize for being.
Oh, that was
real.
beautiful.
No, and Laura put, love the refrain, made me cry. Oh, that's what Laura said. And Lainey said, beautiful. Really big
Thanks.
risk there, Christy.
I thought I could do it, but
You did do it.
You did do it.
You're fine.
That's actually what doing it looks like, okay?
You did it.
The amazing thing about that poem is that it was such spare language, but we knew exactly what you were talking about, and we knew exactly where that took place, and it just it just got us.
Mhm.
Got us.
Good job.
thank you.
Good job, girl. Well, fabulous night. Ellen, thank you so very much. Thank you to everybody for being here.
Wait, you're gonna let me read?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't
Wait,
I didn't even put your name down. I'm sorry. Who am I going to?
Heidi Hermanson.
Heidi, that's right. I'm so sorry. Thank you. I'm so glad you reminded me. You said not first, but I almost forgot. No, okay, no, we're good.
Okay, so this is out of my book, which came out in 2018. It's called Waking to the Dream.
Gorgeous cover.
And thanks. And this is called The Carrying Over. So it kind of fits in with some of what we've been doing tonight. And thank you for having this. And I'm looking forward to staying on your radar and reading again with you. And can everybody hear me fine? Is this a good volume? Okay. The Carrying Over. This is a ferry to another life. Beams stuck on high, gaze unwavering towards the future. What seems like a dilapidated wreck of rotten planks is bejeweled inside, encrusted with glory, an open letter to the ocean. There are no leather-clad, whip-brandishing personal trainers here, just softly rounded women who resemble your dear blue-haired grandmother long gone. They wear fragrant white face powder and clunky jewelry. They cluck softly, smile knowingly, and nod approvingly at the most inane of your remarks. It is not a matter of boarding or not boarding. The pull is strong. The rope the sail rides on, rippling, the launch is now. See how the ocean clears a path before you. The lime and lapis seafoam dreams sparkle as you ride out the storm. You are safe below where it's dark. There is no fear for time, for the clocks have long since been thrown overboard, along with your checkbook, spare glasses, and mortgage.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heidi.
Thank
really
you.
love the language. Yep, the ending. Lady said the same thing I did. That's awesome. Thank you so very much. And
Thank you. I'm glad to have run across you randomly on Facebook, and I hope to come back.
Oh, fabulous. That'd be wonderful.
And since I double booked myself, I'm jumping off. Thank you. Nice to see you.
All right. Be well. Thank you.
Be well.
All right, guys. Thank y'all so very much. And Ellen, really enjoyed it. It was a pleasure meeting you. I will send this to you when I get it.
How can we get her a signed copy of her book?
Okay.
so you can either email me at the email that's in the chat, or I'm on my website is literally www.ellenstone.org, and there's a contact. So ellenstone.org, contact me. I just need your address, and I will send you a signed copy, and then you can send me a check.
Okay,
All right.
great.
Wonderful. So fabulous. Yep. So we could get signed copies, which is what I really enjoy doing. And
Yeah.
Karen and I are both going to need more bookcases. All right, guys. Steve out.
It's a problem.
It is a problem.
It's a great
I have
problem.
the same problem since you started this, Malika.
I'm so sorry.
I swear to God, I have like 2 huge piles of books, and it's all things I've ordered since
I
you
actually have
started
a
doing it.
picture of me with just surrounded by books, and I look like a hoarder. But you know,
I am a hoarder.
That's kind of hoarding. That's the best thing to hoard.
Right?
We're all hoarders. We're all hoarders.
Yeah.
North
I have
Carolina.
a question. How does one get on your mailing list, Malika?
I am very poor at managing a mailing list, so I really do everything by Facebook. It's yeah. So if you look up book launch or Redheaded Stepchild, by the way, if you get any rejections for your poetry, we are open for the month of February. We only take poems that have been rejected elsewhere. So send me your rejects. I love them. Yes. So yeah, check on Facebook. We've had it has been the touchstone for my week. So
Hey, Malika, let me ask, on the North Carolina Poetry Society's website, do they put the information for people to get in touch with you about these readings? Is that on there?
no, I don't think I've done that. I think, yeah, I think I'm kind of just loosey-goosey. Everybody shows up. It's worked so far.
I can relate.
Yeah, that's
But you're
it.
president of the North Carolina Poetry Society. Come on.
Yeah, I know. You think I'd be, but see, Karen's the organized one.
She is.
No.
I just run in 10 different directions at the same time.
I'm just the one that likes to suggest what other people can do.
All right, guys, have a wonderful night. Stay safe.
Thanks.
Great to see y'all in Michigan.
Bye.
Go Blue. Bye.
Bye.